Braves outfielder Jurickson Profar left today's game with an injured left wrist. What happened? What do we know? And where do the Braves go from here? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into a special live edition of Braves Today on Saturday, March 8th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, and I really wish I wasn't coming to you under these circumstances. We are still kind of reeling from Jurickson Profar, Braves left fielder, leaving today's game against the Pirates with an injured left wrist. He made a diving catch attempt in the top of the fourth inning. Landed, it was his second diving catch attempt of the game, by the way. Came down injured, was attended to by Braves trainers, walked off the field under his own power. I have a clip. We're going to try to see if we can get this to work. If you're watching the replay of this later and the clip's not in here, it's because they came at us with copyright. But let's see if we can show you what happened. So the official word we got from the Braves comms team, and I think they put this on the main Twitter account as well, was, quote, outfielder Jurickson Profar was removed from today's game with a jammed left wrist. Initial x-rays were negative, and he is set to undergo further testing at a time yet to be determined. So a couple things to think about here when you see that injury and the way that he reacted to it, and then what the team said afterwards. First thought of mine is we've seen plenty of situations where this did end poorly, right? The guy comes down, he rolls up on his wrist. I'm thinking about Hideki Matsui with the Yankees, right? Completely destroyed his wrist. Jared Kelenic did something like this last year in Boston. And I think they held him out most of the weekend, but he was a similar situation where they took him out of the game. It was sore and it hurt. X-rays came back negative, and he ended up being okay. He missed the weekend and he entered the lineup again. Couple thoughts I have. First one is I always thought it was funny X-rays were negative. I understand the presence, like there was no presence of a fracture, but I always thought it was funny. He has bones in there. Like the X-rays weren't negative. They had something there. But just because the initial X-rays were negative doesn't necessarily mean the Braves have completely escaped the worst case scenario here, right? I'm not trying to be doom and gloom on this. I do want people to understand that, one, you're limited by the capabilities of whatever local X-ray facility you used. And it's possible that in the initial aftermath of it, while the swelling is still intense and everything, something may not show up on that initial X-ray that then comes up later. Think about when Orlando Arcia missed time in 2023. The initial, he left that game, X-rays done at the stadium that night were negative. When he was re-examined after still having significant pain, they found the microfracture in the wrist and he missed like 3 weeks or something like that. So just because the initial X-rays are negative doesn't necessarily mean you're entirely out of the blue. The other reason it doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the blue is because this could be more than just bone, right? This could be a ligament issue, something like that. They did say that further testing, he said to undergo further testing at a time yet to be determined. I'm willing to bet that is probably going to be an MRI or a CT scan or both. And if there is some sort of ligament issue, it would probably come up then. They're also going to do, obviously, a physical examination, check his pain levels. I think in the morning, how Jurickson Profar feels is probably going to be pretty important. They probably can get him into a facility tonight or first thing in the morning. They probably don't have to wait until Monday. But just because we got the report of initial X-rays are negative does not necessarily mean we are out of the blue just yet. At the same time, it does mean that the worst case scenario, which was a broken wrist, is probably off of the table, right? Something that was significant and was bad, they would have caught that in that first initial. If it was clearly and obviously shattered, they'd have seen it in that initial x-ray, right? So you are in a situation where, okay, it's probably not the worst case scenario. What is the severity of this? We have not gotten official, we have not gotten Brian Snitker or anybody else on the record about this. The media schedule for today was his availability was going to be during batting practice, so he already spoke to the media this morning. Spencer Schwellenbach did talk to the media. I have that video. It's going to be up on the channel probably about 15 minutes after we're done with this live show. I don't know if he said anything about it, but odds are he would not have known. It would have been something where Profar was still getting checked out while he met with the media. Typically in spring, instead of getting the starter at the very end of the game, you literally, as soon as they come out of the game, you leave the press box, you walk to the outside of the stadium. The clubhouse is out beyond center field. You leave the press box, you walk out beyond center field, and you meet them outside the clubhouse while the game is still being played. So I don't even know. I don't remember exactly how long Schwellenbach came out of this game. I don't remember if Schwellenbach was even still in the game or not when Profar got hurt. I want to say he went 3 and left. So the beat may not have even seen it live, right? And so I doubt that Schwellenbach has anything to say in there. Odds are we're going to need to wait for Snit tomorrow. Typically, Brian Zinker does talk. Either if it's a home game, he talks during batting practice. If it's an away game, he talks before they leave to go to the opposing ballpark. So we'll get another update likely there. Let's talk about what options Atlanta has, right? Depending on the best case and worst case scenario and what's probably going to happen. We'll do that next, and then we'll get your questions and your comments. We'll do that next right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby coming to you on rough and frustrating circumstances, right? Jurickson Profar left today's game with what the Braves are calling a jammed left wrist. Will be evaluated further at some point in time in the future. Given that it's Saturday, I fully understand why they said at a time yet to be determined, because they have to figure out what MRI facilities they can get into and things like that. Okay, so let's game this out a little bit, right? What happens if Jurickson Profar misses some time? If he just misses spring, right? If they think he's ready for opening day, there's no real significant changes, right? Nothing really. Think about last year where Ronald didn't play in spring a whole lot. Other than being potentially a little bit rusty when the season starts, there's no real issues there for if Profar misses time. But if his absence extends into the regular season, that's where you see a little bit of shuffling of the roster. We've kind of been talking about the likely scenario was Jared Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz platooning in right field with Harrison center and Profar in left. If Profar is not ready for opening day, that absolutely becomes a situation where Kelenic and Profar are both probably starting every day, right? Profar starts off on the injured list, so you brought Brian De La Cruz from a bench spot to an everyday spot in the outfield. And then who this helps the most, I think, is Luke Williams, right? Eli White makes the roster. We already knew he was going to as the utility man. But if he's now your fourth outfielder, Luke Williams still makes the roster as a utility man. The other option here is you see Atlanta go out and try to bring in an outfielder. I don't think that that's likely. We saw this last year, right? We saw this last year with Adam Duvall, was picked up partway through spring. Adam Duvall is still a free agent. He said he'll retire if he doesn't get a couple $1 million. I don't know if he's going to get a couple $1 million, but you've got options, right? If they wanted to add another outfielder to the roster, Jake Marisnick is still in camp. Carlos D. Rodriguez was just optioned down to Gwinnett. I feel like, having never debuted in the majors, he's probably not the guy they would go with. I feel like Jake Marisnick or Connor Capel would probably be the additional outfielder added. But either way, this is a situation where if Profar's not ready for opening day, your short-term solution is to just promote another one of the NRIs in camp. You guys in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't really think of anybody who's a free agent outfielder who would make sense to bring in and then keep on the roster into the regular season. I can't think of anybody. And there is a good point. Everyday Listener Lab has a good little point here that Jared Kelenic is raking, and it does kind of make you feel a little bit better. Yeah, he had a rough spring last year. I think that's part of the reason that the team brought in Adam Duvall is they said, okay, right, maybe Kelenic is not in fact ready for an everyday job, and we need to give him a platoon partner. Jared Kelenic right now is 4 for 17, 2 homers, a double, a triple, 2 runs, 2 RBI, 2 walk, 4 strikeouts. Small sample size, 17 at-bats, right? But he absolutely is doing better than he was last spring. Brian De La Cruz is ridiculous. 7 of 19 right now. 1 run, 1 RBI, no walks to 2 strikeouts. He's batting .368. So you feel good about the idea if you have to grab one of those guys and promote them on opening day, you absolutely could do that. Carlos D. Rodriguez, like he did not do bad when he was up with the team. He was 5 of 16, 2 runs, a double, an RBI, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, and a stolen base. The issue you have there, I touched on a second ago, is I really don't feel like the guy who's never debuted in the majors is probably the right choice here. It makes a lot of sense that you would go with somebody like Jake Marisnick, who can give you defense. He can give you speed. He stole 2 bases in spring. He's not an everyday caliber outfielder, but you absolutely can carry both him and Eli White, and it gives you a lot of defensive versatility. And if White has to go into a game in the infield, you still have a guy who can step into your outfield, be a defensive replacement for Brian De La Cruz late, and things like that. Again, there's a bunch of you guys in the comments. If you can think of a free agent outfielder that makes sense, definitely, hop in here, let me know. But I can't think of a free agent outfielder that makes more sense than the guys who are already on the roster, whether it's non-40 man or 40 man. You are in a situation of a lot of these guys are not on the 40 man roster. And so depending on who you choose to promote, you may have to make a 40 man spot. Brian De La Cruz, thankfully, is on the 40 man roster, but that's another reason why, you might be likely to take you might not want to take a Jake Marisnick or a Connor Capel. Braves Thrills went in here and mentioned Alec Verdugo. I was not opposed to the Braves signing Alec Verdugo in free agency until they went out and got Profar, right? I don't know if he would take a deal with the understanding that it would be a short-term deal, right? That's the issue. And AA's talked about this before to us, right? He's talked to the media about it's so hard to build a good bench in Atlanta because unlike other teams, Atlanta can't promise you playing time. Atlanta can't promise that you will get to platoon with somebody or that you will get to rotate in with the regulars. And there's still things they can do to get guys. They got Carlos D. Rodriguez over a bunch of other teams because they gave him a 40-man spot. They had an open 40-man spot, and a bunch of teams did not. But for the most part, Atlanta's issue is outside of, maybe Brian De La Cruz, there's not many guys you can sign and say, yeah, you're going to get 200 plate appearances this season. Because when everything's working right, every single one of these guys plays every single day. So I do think they would run into an issue with some guys. Verdugo may be at the point where he's like, I need a job. Opening days in less than 3 weeks. But the likelihood is that you're not going to find somebody in free agency better. I do still think if they promote somebody who's not on the 40-man roster, if they add an additional outfielder to the roster, it could be Carlos D. Rodriguez simply because he's on the 40-man. Again, the whole question here is how long is Profar out? If Profar's out 2 weeks, similar to Sean Murphy, I don't think they bring in somebody from outside. Now, if Profar's out half the season, which that's the thing, we don't know, then you have an open question of would Atlanta be comfortable platooning Brian De La Cruz and Kelenic for half a year, or would they want to try to bring in somebody like a Verdugo, things like that? They'll probably promote somebody. The other option you could have is you could see one of the infielders who has played in the outfield before. You could see one of them may be added to the roster in lieu of another outfielder. Maybe this is the trick that you need for Christian Cairo. Maybe this is the break that he needs to make the roster. Because as of now, I had him getting sent back to the Guardians. I don't quite think he's done enough to make the opening day roster, and he was a Rule 5 pick. This is a scenario where possibly you see him make the roster knowing that, hey, Eli White's going to spend time in the outfield and we can have 2 infielders, right? Or, we have somebody who's played a little bit of outfield in their past, maybe Nick Allen, whoever, additional guy make the roster. Unfortunately, the hard thing here, just to remind everybody, is we don't know the severity as of now. And odds are it could be tomorrow. Again, Brian Snitker talks to the media every Sunday morning, or usually before every game, during batting practice before they get on the buses or whatever. So we don't have the official schedule from Braves media yet for Sunday, but odds are he'll be speaking to the media on Sunday morning. He'll probably give a little bit of an update, but if Profar hasn't been checked out till then, by then, we won't know until Monday. So unfortunately, we don't have everything, but I think what's important here is the big question: is he back for opening day or not? Right? If Jurickson Profar is back by opening day, I don't quite think this is a huge problem, right? Ronald Acuna Jr. missed a lot of spring last year. He was not the same caliber of player in 24 that he was in 23. So, but again, we don't know how much of that was missing spring, how much of that was the instability in the knee, that he, whatever it may have been. So here's to recap before we close out this really impromptu live show. Here's what we know. Jurickson Profar so far has not shown to have a fractured wrist. So the worst case scenario is avoided. He's going to get some more testing coming up. It will be probably tomorrow. It's just kind of hard to find an MRI on Saturday night, I'm assuming, in Northport. And we'll probably not actually know anything until Monday. I'm going to put the over-under. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to put the over-under on best case scenario. We still don't see him until probably Wednesday. Assuming that he's just jammed it and he's perfectly fine, we probably don't see him actually play in a spring training game until at least Wednesday, possibly the end of the week, simply because they don't want to run the risk of him getting hurt anymore. And I do think somebody mentioned this early in the show about him being out there and diving in the outfield and things like that. Here you go. Everyday listener laugh. I do think that he dove twice, right? Try to catch balls here. I do think that it is a little difficult for some of these guys to turn it off, right? They're trying to get ready for opening day. They're trying to get ready for the regular season. Part of the reason that play where he got hurt looked a little awkward was because he probably realized partway through, I shouldn't be doing this, and tried to pull up. So I don't really know how to stop this from happening unless you just have these guys DH, right? But you can't tell Michael Harris, hey, don't go chase down balls in center field. So I don't know if this can be fixed. I'm hoping this is not the start of another 2024 type season for injuries. I know that it was foolish to think that Atlanta would not be injured at all, right? Injuries happen in baseball. The hope we've all had is just that it can't be as bad as 2024, right? And so far, it kind of feels like we're closer to 2024 than we are 2023. Injuries happen to everybody. They happen whether you go to the WBC or you stay in camp. They happen whether you're DHing or playing the field or whatever. But we've now seen 2 opening day starters go down in Sean Murphy and Jurickson Profar. This team has depth. They have guys that can cover those missed at-bats, those missed innings. The only hope here is that more injuries don't happen between now and opening day. I still think even if you don't have Jurickson Profar for 3 weeks of the regular season and you don't have Sean Murphy for 3 weeks of the regular season, this team is still good enough to win the division and make a run in the postseason, provided that you have enough healthy guys when you get there. So I don't love this by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not panicking about this, right? That is everything that we know. If anything new comes out between today and Monday, we'll probably be covering it on the Monday episode of the Braves Today podcast. So do us a favor while you're here on YouTube watching this live show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. If something else happens and we have to go live, you'll get a ping that we're going live again. Until next time, thank you for being here, everybody. I hope we don't meet like this again. And this has been Braves Today.